Hello and welcome to my second part of getting ready to implement your COVID-19 management plan for your salon. Welcome today. I'm very excited to be here. It has been so horrible outside, so I'm actually quite pleased to be in here doing some work. Today I would like to talk about yesterday we talked about getting your COVID management plan together, what was required, where you could find information and how you could put it together. There was a resource to support this in my Facebook group that you were free to grab, and just sort of stepped you through that process. It wasn't overly complicated or complex. It was just a really simple sort of broad strokes kind of resource to get you started and to help get that happening for you. So today I want to take it to the next step and talk about implementing that COVID management plan that you've so well created for your salon, and implement it into your salon. Now, I just want to talk about a few things for those in New Zealand. I don't know whether you saw the news today, a second day with no new cases, and it's really hard to know when salons will be reopening, but I think if you realistically planned for somewhere around next Thursday would probably be a realistic time frame. So that gives you an idea about how long you've got to get this ready, and you probably would have been feeling a little bit overwhelmed if you had started that resource that I gave you yesterday, the sheer volume of work in terms of reviewing all the areas of your salon. It can be a little bit overwhelming. My advice, one section at a time, don't overburden yourself. But now we're going to move on to the next bit, which is implementing it. Now, so remember, this has to be up and running by the time your first clients are coming to the salon. So you've got kind of a time frame now, about a week or just over a week to get this happening. So we're going to go through that today. We're going to look at how to implement this into your salon and how we're going to do it. So the process of getting your COVID management plan in place, broad strokes. Yesterday, we talked about understanding the new requirements, and we talked about how to get those from national guidelines and rules. And then we also looked at the industry interpretations of that and how you could go to your local councils or your issuer of your health license or your trading license to be able to do that. Or your industry association. Now, I know that in New Zealand Association of Registered Hairdressers has really been working on this, and I'm imagining this is happening across the globe in terms of your local industry association is interpreting the national guidelines on hairdressers coming back to work. So that's where you're going to find the information. The next step is to develop a new policy or procedure. For those who want to know the difference between a policy and procedure, a policy is your business's official rules, and they often involve a memo out to all staff telling them of these new policies and that violation of them is much more serious. A procedure is a process in which the policy is applied. Now, you've got a very short time frame, so be realistic. Unless you've already got policies in place that could be amended, I would suggest you stick with just developing a procedure and then retrospectively apply a policy as you have got some more time. So to do this, we talked yesterday about engaging with your staff, looking at surveying your clients, seeking practical solutions, and documenting. And so that's working through creating written records of what you're trying to put together. Again, go back to that resource that was in the group. So, so welcome today. And if you're watching live, just pop live in the comments. And if you are on replay, put replay so I know. I'm really pleased that you're joining me. This is a really big issue for the industry, and I'm so pleased that you're here today to try and get some clarity around how to do this for your salon. So today we're going to look at step 3, which is implement the new policy or procedure into your salon. It is only one point, but it is a big one. So we're going to go through this separately. So what you need to do is you need to catalogue or collate your new policies and procedures so that they're all together in one place. We need to make sure they're adequately resourced to apply them. We need to make sure that training is undertaken so that all staff understand how to do it. And we need to apply management checks and review schedules. And I'll go through each of these points separately. There will be a resource available today after this Facebook Live in the group again. So if you're jumping in there, make sure you grab both. Which will take you through. And I'm actually going to use it today as a guide to just walk us through what we're going to do. So the first step is catalogue your resource. So you want an organised response. And here is a little resource that I have created for you. And this is just basically it just outlines all your areas that you've reviewed, and so that you know that you have reviewed each of those areas. And you might find as you go along that you need to break one area down into smaller areas. Now, an example of that in the service area, you might want to create a specific procedure for giving hot drinks. So just because that is an area that is a real at-risk area of cross-contamination. So perhaps you might decide that, just to make it clearer that is going to be a specific procedure on its own. So there's lots of little steps there. You don't need to fill them all in. This is not, it's just more that's how many, if you need more, print out this page twice and then you've got double the amount, but you don't need to fill them all in. So the first step is, so this is a catalogue. So this is where you know where all your policies are for, or your procedures are for dealing with COVID. They're all in one space that you have a list of them now. The second column is create a date. It's really important and if you ever get audited, it's really clear that they want to know when you created this procedure or policy for your salon. Then where it's stored. So is it up on a wall? Is it in the staff room? Is it at the front desk? Where could people find the information that they require and the checklists that go with it? Where is all the detail around it? Training, what training requirements is there any training requirements and, have they been undertaken? And then finally, when has it been reviewed? Now we'll go into that a little bit talking about what review looks like. I don't want you to be panicked about this. It's not a big corporate thing. It is literally talking about when changes have been made. So that's the first response. It's a place for you to collate, to create that clarity for yourself and your team around where all the areas are that have now got COVID responses to them. The next part is this one, which is for you to help with your management. This is a resource list. It is literally to help you as you go through your policies and you write them and you discover that you need new equipment, new PPE, new barriers, whatever it is that you need in your salon, you write it onto this list so that you have it all in one spot as to where you what you're going to need. So it's literally split the items required. Now, this is not just for one policy. This is for your whole COVID response management plan. Some areas will not require additional resources. Others will. And then the next column is the supplier. So for capes and aprons, often you can go to your colour company. They often supply those, so you can include those. I know in New Zealand, the New Zealand Association of Registered Hairdressers are looking to bulk source a number of PPE items that may be required in New Zealand and sell them to New Zealand hairdressers at a competitive price so that they're not being gouged by people in other businesses wanting to make profiteer off PPE. So they're sort of protecting those New Zealand hairdressers. So make sure you jump on there. And I think they're offering it, my understanding is that they're offering it to both association and non-association hairdressers. So it's available to anyone who runs a salon in New Zealand because it is about protecting each other at this point. The cost, so this is really important for you when you do your budgets. Some people are looking at price increases to offset the COVID management within the salon and the added expense to businesses around that. So this is a really good place to make sure you're collating that. You're getting some real feel of what this is truly costing you, because if you're paying out small amounts here and there, it can be deceiving how much you're actually paying and how much you're actually requiring to get yourself back running and trading again, because that cost ultimately should be passed in part or full onto the consumer. So it's a really good idea to keep a record of what you're expecting to pay or what you end up paying. The next bit is the quantity required. So how much are you going to need? This is sometimes something that does take some calculation, and that's why I've put it there, because things like gloves, masks, if you do decide to use them, face shields, you might need those in fairly significant numbers. And think about the number of clients you're doing, the number of styles you have, how often you can wash them and replace them in terms of being able to, how many do you need? And then again, that should say acquired, not review, but that's the number that whether you've acquired it. So yes or no, have you got that equipment? Because some of them you will struggle to be able to start operating without them, and others you may be able to find another solution for. So it's really important to know what you've got, where you want to get it from, and be able to keep track of everything you're ordering, because in some cases it may be a significant amount of items. So the reason I've put this together is so that you are really clear about what you're spending, what you're buying, and that there's a process, because you've got a limited time frame to get back to work, and there's a lot of work that needs to happen. So this is about keeping you up to date and informed about what's going on. And the final part of this resource is training. Now, this is really, really important. So this is going to be the make or break of your policy. This is what's really going to be the success of being able to implement it into your salon. If you are not training your staff on how to do this, it's very unlikely they will be able to maintain your expectations. So you'll be setting them up to fail if you don't provide them with training. It's really important that this happens between now and when you reopen. So now is the time to dust off your Zoom, crack open your Facebook Lives in your group, and really get in there and talk to your staff about what these new changes will be and train them. So let's just talk about what training could involve. So training could involve something like what I'm doing with you today, is just a lecture situation where I'm talking to you and you're listening and learning. It could involve interaction, where it is a question-answer situation, so where questions are being asked and you're answering them. Or it could involve role-playing or scenario, sort of role-playing, in terms of, so you given a scenario and the girls try and work out what they need to do. And that's particularly good. So each of them have their own benefits. The lecture situation is good for giving a general overview, to help frame the problem and to talk about some of the solutions that have been that you've come across. The question answer is really good for providing some clarity. What are specific things that people are struggling with getting their head round? What does this mean for them? What does it mean for their ability to deliver service as they've always done it? And the role playing is really good for refining that knowledge and dealing with exceptional circumstances. So you might have a policy on how you deal with entry and exit, but how would that change if someone came in a wheelchair or was blind and had an assisted person with them, or it involved a mother with a number of teenage children. So these are the sort of things that you could thrash out in your training. So training is really important because it does two things. It trains your staff on how you want things done, and it gives them the tools to succeed in delivering your COVID response the way you want it. But also the other thing it does when you're implementing new policies really quickly is it helps highlight potential problem areas before you put them online, before the policies become live or practices become live. So this is partly why I've got this resource for you as well. So this is your evidence, if you're ever audited, that you have completed training in all those areas, that your staff were aware of what needed to happen and what they need to do. This is a summary sheet. You may decide to create a more detailed training plan for each training, but this is at very least a summary sheet to get you going. So it basically covers the areas you're training. So it might be 1 or 2 or 3 areas you train at once. It's up to you depending on the amount of change that is going into those areas. Use your own discretion. And then the date, really important that you record this. And then also the attendees. So if someone doesn't come to that training, you've got a record of that, and you can then catch them up later on what those changes were that they need to discover. And then the next box is issues raised during training. And this is what we talked about before. When you're trying to implement something really quickly and you want to get, before you get it online, doing pre-start training will help pick up where there is needing to be some ironing out in the way things are run. Because the great thing about training your team and doing it collectively with them is that you've got more than one head in the game. So they will perhaps see things from a position that you didn't quite understand before, because, where your chair is in the salon, where your stylist bay is, you've based on your knowledge of that stylist bay, but the senior that works right at the other end of the salon, their perspective of what's happening, they might identify something being a potential problem before it goes online. So this is a place where you can record where those potential issues are identified and what they are. And then, of course, the next box is when the date that they were resolved. So, was it something that needed to be a change happen? And then it goes back to your original sheet in the review box, and then you just attach it to the correct procedure that you have reviewed. So, when you're doing the training, you might find that you're doing more than one training in that session, and that's okay. It's you use your judgment how bigger changes are going to happen. So things like reception, maybe the service. Those sorts of things might be their own standalone training because there's going to be significant changes, but things that only have small changes, maybe the way cleaning's conducted and a few other things could just be put together as one training where the small changes are put together and you create a little micro training for that. So that is basically the process. So when you're going to put into place a plan, these are the 3 steps that you need to go to. You need to understand the new requirements, and I totally get it that the government hasn't come out fully with what level 2 will look like, and some of those are a little bit vague. But use your discretion, and certainly get in contact with your local association and local council. They can probably give you a more specific steer. And then develop your new policy and procedure. Make sure you talk to staff, potentially survey clients, particularly if you're in an area that's been quite heavily affected by COVID. Seek practical solutions. You don't want to have to be remodelling. So I've just had a question that says that I have a rep that's told me that clients should be wearing protective gear as well, so we should supply this at an add-on cost or sell little packs. This is a really good point. We do provide protective gear for clients in the terms of a cape, so they get that covered up. Whether you use disposable capes or whether you're re-washing capes every use, that will be up to your salon on how you manage that. But yes, so that's another thing you have to consider. So go back to your cost sheet, and when the government gives us specific instructions on whether clients will need to be using masks, that is something that you will need to consider. So you'll need to understand the cost associated with that and what you're directly passing on to clients. It's not going to be as cheap as it was, and unfortunately, there will be add-on costs to the current services you provide. So that's a really good point. How you structure that that charge, because also as well, if a client uses a mask and they're there for an extended period of time, they do need to be replaced. They're not, you can't just leave them on indefinitely, because the minute they get wet, they become ineffective. So that's another thing to consider. If they're there having their hair processed and they're going to be there 3 hours, they might actually require 6 masks over that period. So that's something to consider. And my advice to you is please get in there and look at those guidelines. I'm not planning on doing a proper Facebook Live the rest of this week, but as soon as we have some guidelines, I will just jump up on just a little mini Facebook Live, not a big one with slides like this, and just talk about what that could mean. My feeling is that at level 2, physical distancing is still required. So that should give you a steer as to what may be required. But definitely keep a track of your costs. That's really important, because you're going to have to pass those on in part or full. Some people will absorb some of it, but you shouldn't be expected to absorb all of it forever, because it's going to be too onerous on your business. So, I might go into my Facebook group. There is a link in the description above. Grab those 2 resources. They're a fabulous starting point for you to do. If that's all you do, then that's at least something, and it's a collated and it's an organised response. But some of you will take this further, and you've already got policies and procedures that you can adapt and add and grow from. But it is a very difficult situation. I know people are feeling very frustrated, but my gut feeling is sometime around Thursday next week, provided we, fingers crossed, continue to have 0 or very low numbers of cases, so showing no community transmission, we should be able to start around that. I would say sometime Wednesday, Thursday next week would be a realistic time frame. So you want to have this started. So some things you can definitely do now. Look at areas you can do, like your tea and coffee serving, your front of desk, your contact tracing, your entry and exit logs, your cleaning procedures. They can all be done now. We don't need any further steer from the government on terms of dealing with clients, your proximity, your PPE around that, additional to what we currently use in terms of gloves, aprons and capes. We may need to just wait, but if you get the stuff you can do now done, by the time it comes to we get the information, you've only got a little bit to deal with. So, it's a big job. So be gentle on yourself. Do not panic. Everyone is in the same boat. Everyone is feeling stressed and overwhelmed by this. This is why I'm making these available for free. And I just want you guys to have them. There is, so that you can really start to have some confidence in putting this together, so that you are compliant and you are meeting the government's expectations. So thank you so much. Next week, I'm going to do a little bit of a change. We're going to look at how to decide which is the best product company for you. Now, a lot of people have been using their product sales as an absolute lifeline to their business at the moment. And this is an opportunity to look at and make sure you're getting the most out of your product company, whether it's the best fit for you, and what sort of things you should look for, and what sort of things are available from product companies that you can sort of tap into and utilize, because your relationship with your product company is going to become more and more important as time moves on, because they are going to be really critical in helping us through these difficult moments. So that's what we're going to look at next Monday. So if you're around, I'd love it if you could join me. And otherwise, I will speak to you later. Make sure you jump into the Facebook group and grab those resources. There's going to be 2 of them up. The other one's going in as soon as this is finished. So thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to speaking to you next week. See you later. Bye.